in my memories, I wandered again to the little old church by the road. I can see the dear people and hear them so plain, singing songs of that blessed abode. I can hear my dear mother as she fervently prayed, "Blessed Jesus, help me carry my load." She was never downhearted and never dismayed in the little old church by the road. There my mother was praying and the preacher was saying, "Sinner come and repent of your sin." There the eagle was routed and the sisters all shouted and the brethren were saying, "Amen." It was there I met Jesus and I gave him my life. It was there he took the weight off my load, and he freely removed all my sorrow and strife in the little old church by the road. I remember the preacher so gentle and brave as he told how the Father above gave his only Son Jesus all the lost ones to save. Such wonderful, wonderful love. I will always remember how he spoke when he said, "Come to Jesus, he will lighten your load." And so often he told of the life-giving bread in the little old church by the road. There my mother was praying and the preacher was saying, "Sinner come and repent of your sin." There the eagle was routed and the sisters all shouted and the brethren were saying, "Amen." It was there I met Jesus and I gave him my life. It was there he took the weight off my load, and he freely removed all my sorrow and strife in the little old church by the road. I can never forget all those lovely old songs that the people so joyfully sang. How they told the Lord's message to the people gone wrong, and the echoes so joyfully rang. I will always remember when I truly believe Jesus freely took the weight off my load. And the joy of salvation I truly received in the little old church by the road. There my mother was praying and the preacher was saying, "Sinner come and repent of your sin." There the eagle was routed and the sisters all shouted and the brethren were saying, "Amen." It was there I met Jesus and I gave him my life. It was there he took the weight off my load, and he freely removed all my sorrow and strife in the little old church by the road.
I'm a little young, and I've been a member of Dodson Race Free Will Baptist Church for, I believe it's 70 years. And I still love it. In a word, because I can't go. We're having a revival going on back there. And I was sick and couldn't go. So I just went back home or just stayed at home and laid down in the bed. And the kids went up to, the rest of them went to church. But they told David I was sick. And he come down there and sit by me. I was in the bed. He sat in a chair by me. Sometimes church very good.
Revivals back in a long time ago?
Oh, yeah. Shall I tell you what, they was old house, a whole lot. back years ago.
You don't think?
But the old days, old people, now they used to enjoy themselves. They ain't like this young generation today. I think they went for the benefit of it. And then most of them may go, they just be seniors. But now they did. They really act like they was honest back years ago now.
First memory I've got is meeting all the kids around. The Sunday school teacher was Thelma. She taught us upstairs in the going into the church, the room on the left. And then we got a little older, we went downstairs in the second room, and Dana talked to, I don't remember what the age group was. And then we got a little older and we come into the room where the stairs come down, and Cecil taught that class. And we moved upstairs then, we got a little older, and we just took Cecil with us. And he taught us up there for a while, and then Dana taught us again up there. And then we moved out into where the choir sat, and they used to just pull the sheet or curtain or whatever you call it across there. And Bertle taught us, the older kids there.
But Dodson's Branch has always been my home, and I love it here. And we don't know how well we have it here until you go out in other parts of the country. And this community is blessed to have the two churches that we have right here now that we have. We're really blessed, and the school. Got to bring that school in, because we're blessed to have that school. So it's a blessed community we live in.
When they had the revivals, there was two churches was going on in the old one, you know. Two group of church members, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And they had 1 week, and the other churches had the other week. They took a week about. One have a revival, and maybe next weekend the other had the revival. But still, they went together, I mean, until they built another church out here.
Well, my name is Mark Webb, and of course, was pretty much raised at the intersection there of Willis Martin Road and what's known as the Thomas Allen Mill Road. And just nearly across the street from us was Comer and Carlene Phillips. But that's the only church that I ever remember going to, other than at homecomings at West Chapel. We'd go over there on the homecomings for that. But Free Will Baptist Church down there is where I went all my childhood life. And I also remember foot washings, and I don't remember any outside. The ones I remember, they were inside, with a pan of water and towels and stuff. And I remember the teacher, Dana Lynn, was a wonderful, wonderful Sunday school teacher, like down in the basement area there. And
my name is Ruth Mayberry Woolbright. And you asked for the first memory. I guess I'm the oldest person here tonight. And you asked for my first memory. It was, I don't know how old I was. I meant to go and look when I heard about this at the cemetery and see this baby's grave and see when he died. But that's my first memory of being in that church, is seeing that beautiful little boy in that casket. His name was Randall Peyton Smith. And he had such beautiful black hair, and he was just beautiful. And he died at birth. I just have lots and lots of memories. I couldn't begin to tell you all of them. And, I remember Little May's daddy. This has been so funny to me. We were talking. He had a dry humor, and we were talking. His name was Ike Haney, and I just loved him to death. I thought he was great. And we were talking about putting water in. We didn't even have water in the house then, and we had this basement with all this water running through, and so they were saying something about it. And he says, well, I'll tell you what I believe. We ought to get the water out before we put the water in.
There's water kept getting in the basement. And my dad would go out there and work and brush till he couldn't go no farther, hardly, sweeping that water out of the basement. And he's sitting up there. They must have been having a little business meeting or something, because Papa's holding. We don't need to put no more water in the house till we get some water out of the house. So they all doubled up and helped him then to get that out. Papa was a loudmouth, wasn't he?
Frank, Lord, I don't know. We used to always have to walk and go back and forth. We didn't have no church bus or nothing like that. It was you walk or ride in a wagon. And Dad's took us in the wagon several times, but most of the time we walked all the way from our house to the church. And that was fun. We enjoyed it. And never missed a Sunday. And sometimes went on Wednesdays. But then they didn't have church every Wednesday. But when they'd have it, we would go.
First time I remember going to church, I think they had a church about through the week of a day morning. Jerry probably remembers that. That was back in 1950, 53, 52, 53, something like that, I guess it was. And then my Sunday school class teacher was Sally Bean, and I went to Sunday school. And so I didn't go to church that much then, but I went some and all. But that's my first memory. And then I remember Charles saying about it. We went to school out there when they was building this school down here, and that was in 53, I think 54, because we went first time we went to Dodson School was in January 1955, right after Christmas. Yeah.
My name is Marilyn Hawkins Daly. My first memory of the church was I was small, and at that time the building did not have that part that was built back, that cubby hole on the stage. That wasn't there yet. If I remember right, we didn't have a piano player then, maybe not even a piano. I forgot about the music part, but I do know they had a choir and a stove in the middle of the room, or pretty much the middle. And I hated the seats. They was very uncomfortable because I was little. I can just remember I was probably 3, maybe. I don't know if Donnie was born yet or not. So I was just a little sitting and, wiggly. And if you got out of hand, Daddy would give you that look and you knew you were in bad trouble. So I had to look at Daddy a lot.
My name is Jerry Mayberry. I attend the Dodson Branch Free Will Baptist Church, and I've always went there all my life, and my roots run deep, I guess. The first church clerk was my great-great-grandfather, and Jesse Mayberry, and then later on when after 2 churches, the second church that was built, my grandfather helped lay the cornerstone to that, and then a little bit later on, my other grandfather on the other side was attended the association. His name is in there as a delegate. And at that time, back in that time, the evangelists would come, and often they had to ride horses and come a great distance, and they would stay with different people in their homes, being able to go home and come back the next night. So that was some of the things I remember. And a little bit later on, I remember Brother Arville was the pastor, I believe 2 times. And the first time he had a large family, and he had several kids. And one of the things I remember one night, Brother Arville, everybody left, and then in a little while we noticed he was turning around and coming back, and he hadn't called the roll, so he left one of his kids sleeping under the bench.
My name is Linda Maxwell Allen, and my family, we came in probably about 58, 59, and of course I was new to the place and I didn't know anyone. And I remember the first class that my sister and I attending, it was on the left, and that was Thelma's class. So I stayed in there till I kind of got acquainted. And it's been interesting over all these many years. And one of the things I remember is you went in, the women sat on the left side, and the men sat on the right side. So if you didn't know what you wanted to be, if you wanted to be a couple, you sat in the middle aisle. And it's just, I guess I found the love of my life, and that's enough. And he's been worth it all, so I'll pass on.
Do you remember any of the older people when you were young?
Well, I can't tell you all of her names, but I can remember about every one of them. There's Uncle J. Mayberry and Aunt Maudie and Uncle Roscoe and Aunt Bessie and Uncle Arliss and Aunt Emmer, and Uncle John come sometime, and Aunt Nellie.
Grandpa Rector.
And Grandpa Rector. Grandpa Rector was there all the time, Mom's dad. He would never miss a Sunday when he was living, going to church. And Grandpa Mayberry always went too.
Matt Crabtree.
And Matt Crabtree, and Lord, I can't remember all of them. There's too many. Monroe Webb, you remember him? He wasn't. I guess he was already dead when you started coming. Monroe Webb, and Maddie was his wife.
My name is Juanita Mayberry Judd. Mayberry spelled Mayberry, but I'm kin to all these short Mayberries.
We're all cousins.
Right. And I can remember, what I remember about the Free Will Church is I never went to Sunday school there. I went to the revivals, and that's where I got saved in July of 1952 probably, or 53, one or the other. Randall Jones was preaching, and I can remember he was a great evangelist. I remember most, just like Bobby said, they would come to you if they thought you was under conviction. Irene Allen and Billy Moore and them, we'd all walk, and Billy Moore would sing all the way to church. And you could stop people with a car and ask him if he wanted to ride. He wouldn't ride, no, he would walk. And I was baptized in the holler right across from where your mom and dad's latest house was. They had a baptizing hole down there, and that's where I was baptized. And now I went to Sunday school there. We would go, Early Langford was our Sunday school teacher. Quentin Rose was our first pastor, and he's the one baptized me. I have a lot of good memories. They were just, Ida and Emmer and Kay and Armel Hicks would shout all over that house. And I wish that it was still like that. I mean, Lily Swangham and her husband, and Lily Swangham and her husband is the one that we got the land from. And you'll find it all in that booklet about, we give the Free Will Church $1,700, which was a lot of money back then, to buy them out. Well, I believe it was Jay Burris. Was he not he was the moderator out there, wasn't he? And he said that was too much. So they bargained and said they'd take $1,500. But we didn't give in. We still got our $1,700.
A lot of people stood out to me. Cecil Maybury was one, and Birdle. I think them two was real godly men. And I remember Uncle Matt Crabtree talking and his teeth going, chicky, chicky, chicky. Couldn't understand a word he said part of the time. And he was a good man. They was just, when they're old, all of them, they was just good people down there. And I remember my mother-in-law and daddy-in-law. Of course, he is over here on the right. She was over there on the end of the other bench. And Maddie Webb going down through there with that hanky in her hand. But there was just a lot of good people down there.
And when we was little, they'd get two preachers to do revival. And Tommy Brown and his wife, they moved into Milford and Valley's house, didn't they?
So what happened when he was up there preaching?
The floor broke.
He was so spiritual and was stomping around, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Did he keep preaching?
Kept on preaching.
Kept on preaching. Remember Tommy Vaughn too, he's a good preacher. Did you know him?
That preached?
What
was that Rogers
He was
that
a good preacher. Boy, he could preach down.
Rogers.
He didn't care to hurt you. But he told it like it was, and he told the truth, and he was a good preacher.
But I can remember when they was having a revival, and the preacher, and I can't remember who it was. I mean, he got happy, and he went all the way up and down the church on the bench. But I can't remember who it was. I can also remember the night that I came out here, and Linda went to get anointed because she wanted a baby, and she had tried so hard. And then they anointed her with oil, and the next thing you know, Linda was pregnant with Amy. And I remember that so well. And I thought, the Lord hears our prayers. I had a lot of good memories of this church. And I remember when my dad got saved, it was at the other, and I don't know who was preaching the revival there, but he was out in the yard, and he got under conviction, and they went out there, and he got saved, and they shouted all over that yard. And I mean, I was saved before I can remember my dad getting saved.
I came here a long, long time ago, and I remember a lot about the old times when both churches were together, the good times. I can see the people sitting on the stage singing. I could name them. If I named them, I'd probably leave somebody out. And I was baptized down in the holler at the baptizing hole in 1948 or 1949. And there was several people baptized down there, and that's always meant something to me. This church has always meant something to me because of all the people here, and I have good memories of it.
You remember when you were young, if you can, about the church.
I'm still young.
I know you are. You had to walk. You walked to church, didn't you?
So,
You walked.
Walked to church.
Uh-huh.
What's over?
Something. Who all would walk with you?
Oh, yeah.
That she enjoyed going to church so good. She and Dad both. And her and Dad and Lee and Cora Dodson are the ones that started the homecoming. Because always on the third Saturday before the first Sunday, they would go down there and clean off the graveyard. So, and if people wanted to, they decorated that. Then they had to make their flowers out of crepe paper. And Mom and Cora would take their lunch, and they'd take their hoes and their shovels and their picks and things and go down there and cut all the salt bars and all the blackberry bars and everything off it. Then it was just I say the old side. And she always enjoyed that. Her and Dad and Lee and Cora Garrison. And she went to church faithful up until...
Very distinctly the old church, what we call the old church, growing up there. And this is one of my Sunday school teachers right here, Susie and Janice, Edna Phillips, Judy Lee, some of my Sunday school teachers, and they all had a big part in my life. And I'm proud of the fact that most of my family have done gone on, and a lot of my folks don't come here anymore. But I'm still coming. I'm still here. And I'm proud of the fact that my family, my wife, my daughters, and now my little granddaughter are coming to church here. They've all been saved. They're all Christian.
My name is Sandy Garrison. I started attending Dodson Branch, I think in 1986 was the first time that I ever came. I did not grow up in this church. However, I do feel that it's my home. It's felt like home to me for many, many years. Everyone was so welcoming to me because I grew up in a different faith. I particularly remember Susie Mayberry was so good to me in the very beginning because it felt different to me, but I had a true desire to become a part of this family. And one of the things that stands out to me is all of the Bible schools that we've done over the years. I've made a lot of good friends. It's friendships that are strong, and we've helped each other through our marriages, through the deaths of our children, through the marriages of our children.
First memory, I guess, was probably, as far as going to church, I've gone there all my life. My first memory was probably remembering the men. Most all the men always wore a white shirt, and it was usually starched. And most all of them wore this hat. I guess it's a felt hat, maybe. I'm not sure what kind of hat. But anyway, most all men back then wore a hat. And I can remember it being, it was real warm in there in the summertime, real cold in the wintertime. And I can remember standing outside a lot of the revivals. Now the church would be full, and a lot of the revivals would stand outside at the window and look in, see what's going on. And
I guess the first memories of this church is my grandpa rector kept the preachers that came to hold the revival, and I can remember my aunt had to do all the cooking for these people for that during that week. And then I could think of all the children that I taught in Sunday school in this church. And Sister Marilyn talks to me a lot about that, remember me teaching her. And then I can remember when I got saved, I still remember when, most of you don't remember probably, but Lily Swearingham, I can remember her talking to me in the altar and telling me what I needed to do. And that's always stuck with me. And I think of it many times, and then I see these grown people that I taught in Sunday school, and it means a lot to me.
The biggest things that stood out to me was the singing. And I come from a very musical family, and I was blown away by how many good singers there were, the musicians, and just the heart and the spirit as they sang it. It's like it just fills you up on the inside. And we've been truly blessed all the years that I've been here to have a multitude of singers and musicians.
If I could only hear my mother pray again, if I could only hear her tender voices then, how happy I would be. It would mean so much to me if I could hear my mother pray again.
I sometimes keep time. Well, it ain't like Mac Crabtree and Monroe Webb and all that back years ago, but they'd have their little tune for it, and they'd give a little tune and start singing. They'd get their rhythm or whatever you want to call it, tune. And I'll try and sing Once a Man Named Steve. Once a man named Stephen preached about the Lord. Folks were saved and folks were healed as they heard his word. Satan did not like it. Soon he had his crowd. And as he was tried, they heard Stephen cry aloud. I see Jesus standing at the Father's right hand. I see Jesus yonder in the promised land. Work is over, now I'm coming to thee. I see Jesus standing, waiting for me.
Remember Kelly and Fanny Whitaker? Yeah, I remember Kelly and Fanny Whitaker. There's two old maids.
Two old maids.
They were. They weren't never
They wore
married.
hats,
They
didn't
had
they?
blue hair with blue hats.
Oh, yeah.
Purple hair. And
Remember anything funny that happened?
You remember us just laughing at Kelly and Penny's
yeah,
hair
you
and-
could make fun of them.
hair and hat. We'd get tickled.
We
And
just
Farley
made,
said
we just literally made fun of them. Now that's all you can
and
say. We
Farley
made
looked
fun
at
of
us and
Lily and
got-
Kelly Whitaker.
And he grinned.
The
We
way
thought
they
it was
wore
all
their
right,
hair.
but if it wasn't, we had to shut it
And
in.
they sat together all the time. There's two sisters.
There's a base full of us young people.
And
We'd
they'd be
sit together,
dressed,
we'd laugh
they'd be
at them.
dressed to kill. Oh, they was dressed up. And they'd have their hair
Well, we didn't mean
fixed,
to
and
really
we'd
be
make
making
fun
fun.
of
We
it.
was just having fun.
We just mean. I mean, that's all you can say. We was not mean. We didn't do dirty things.
Mischievous.
But we was just mean about stuff like that.
Mischievous.
Make
We
fun
just
of
get
it.
tickled. We couldn't help it.
we get there. We tried to get there early so we could see him come in.
That was a good one, I was you.
Well, we would. And we'd sit where we could see them. And oh, they'd be dressed to kill. But it was fun. I enjoyed going to church. Oh.
One thing I remember is when I was a little girl, Sister Mattie Webb and Sister Dimple Lee would shout. I mean, they would get happy. And Sister Dimple was so funny, she could jump up and down in the shortest little jumps and clap her hands so fast and praise the Lord. And then Sister Ruthie Hardy, she was a very quiet lady. She never said anything at church. She never testified. She was quiet. She sang when we sang, but other than that, she didn't do anything. We were at a feet washing service one night, and she cut loose to shouting, like scared me to death because I wasn't expecting it from her. But she was happy in the Lord, and it was good. And that's just
I was really scared, and I didn't know what to do. And I relied on the saints, the other ladies, and the gentlemen to set that example for me. And I remember specifically Sister Thelma. I think one of the first times I participated, she actually sat down across from me, and she was kind and gentle and talked me through it. And I just remember I sat on the side that I could look at that cross, and I kept thinking about Jesus dying on that cross, and that I wanted to serve Him and be humble that He had done that for me. But I think to me that was one of the most serious times. And I can remember through the years people who participated in the foot washing, and I can remember Brother Carson Knight and him participating, and he would always cry when we would have foot washing, and he would testify, and he would tell his story of how his life had changed. And I can just see other people sitting, many chairs. We would have chairs all the way across the front of the church, and then there would be 2 or 3 rows of women back, and maybe 1 or 2 rows of men back. And everybody would be participating, and we always finished the foot washing and communion service with a song that we would just sing a cappella, and Brother Raymond would lead, and we would leave on that, and some people would be testifying. But to me, that's just one of the most serious things, and what an impact it's had on my life.
I'll just close out by saying how thankful I am to the Lord that He led my feet on the path to come to Dodson's Branch Free Will Baptist Church. I had the privilege of marrying my husband there. We've raised our children there. They were saved and baptized. And we just are a part of a very rich fabric. The church has a long history, and I feel privileged to be a part of it.
I'm like Jeff. My mama had the biggest influence on my life as a Christian, and she always taught us the right way to go, and she always taught us to love the Lord and to serve Him. And I'm also thankful for the people of the church that were not my relatives, that were examples to me, and my Sunday school teachers, and Mary was one of my Sunday school teachers when I was a young teenager, and I appreciate her. Now she's my sister-in-law. But I'm thankful that God allowed me to be here. I consider that a great blessing. I'm thankful for all our church family that we have now. I'm thankful for the church family that has passed before us and blazed the trail that we could be here today celebrating the 150th anniversary.
There is no greater gift than to be standing at that altar when a young person comes down there and kneels and says that they want to ask Jesus into their life. And I will never forget the many opportunities that I've had to kneel with someone at those vacation Bible schools.
I can't ever forget, back when I was a center boy, the influence that these people here at the church had on me as a young boy. Jim Young, he always looked like Goliath to me, and I was just a little fellow. I was pretty good size. I was about 5'10", weighed about 110, 15 pounds, big boy. And he'd walk up and lay his arm around me. Said, "Dally, it's about time you got right with God." my dad wasn't a Christian. I liked going to church, and Cecil Mayberry thought I needed to be a singer with some people, and he would send his kids, or he would come and get me and brought me to church, and I can't forget that. I got involved in a group singing, and we traveled quite a bit, and we all dressed alike, and we had these wool suits. And we went out, it was real cold weather, we went out and sung one Sunday and come back, and we had outside bathroom whip on the, you remember where it was up there, and had to go out and smoke. And I like to sit on the front seat. I always like to sit in front of the church, and so I was sitting between Matt Crabtree and Jim Young. I don't know whether they ever smoked a cigarette in their life or not. And I had to smoke, I thought. And I got up and went out, and that old thick wool suit I had absorbed all that smoke. And I went out there and there to go to the bathroom. I smoked my cigarette, and I went back in the house and went up front and sat down right between them. As I sat down, that wind come up on me. Smelt so horrible. And I felt if I smoked and that stunk like that to me, what did it do to my brothers that never probably done that? And I promised God, I said, if you'll take that cigarette away from me, I'll never smoke again. And that was in 1960 until this day. I've never had a cigarette in my mouth. Got a little something to thank God for in the physical part of it. Thank God for it. And back then it wasn't like it is now. And Charles Ray can attest to this. If you wasn't a Christian, somebody's going to come after you.
Like you brought, I was thinking about that.
They will come after you now.
That's right.
And that's the reason a lot of times, about the time for church to go be out, you'd see a bunch take off out the door. They'd sit there and listen to preaching, but now, invitation time, they took off.
Yeah, sure.
And that's one thing I remember.
And you said something serious. I guess it's serious, but I remember as a young boy, 3 people stood out to me that when we came to every service, these men would be prayed for, and it was Fred Lee, Milford Nelson, and Charles Ray Allen. I never will forget that as a young boy. And most of the time, them guys would come to church. But Mike mentioned the old saints of God would get up there at the altar and pray. And I can remember them getting carried away and praying and calling them men's names to be saved, and them sitting there. But they just get in the Spirit of God and they'd pray for them men. And I guess it was serious, but all 3 of them men eventually got saved. And they was prayed for so many years. And I never will forget that. What a great example of being patient and waiting on God.
One of my first memories is when I actually got saved. I had only been coming a couple of weeks, but I had been under conviction. And Brother Oliver McCowan was preaching. And I knew I needed to be saved, and that very weekend I had some friends who were killed in a car wreck, and I knew that if something happened to me that I would go to hell. And so I remember I was about 3 pews up on the right side of the church, and when Brother Oliver gave the invitation, it's kind of like what Jeff and Brother Dow said. I knew early on in the service that I needed to get saved, but it was just like I couldn't wait for the invitation to happen. I guess I didn't realize I could go, but the one thing I remember, it was almost like floating on air, taking one step out of that pew, and I didn't remember anything else until I knelt at the altar. And so a lot of times people will say they're scared to go up there, but I can honestly say when you take that first step, Jesus takes the rest of the steps for you. And when I knelt at the altar, I remember my future mother-in-law, Sister Nancy, being right there beside me, and I also remember Jeff being right there beside me, and many other members of the church. And I think at that moment I really realized what Christians do for each other and how they're there for each other. So that's one of my first memories of the church.
There were numerous pastors down there, but the pastor and his wife, I guess, that I remember most of all was at the time they were preaching there, it was Brother Tommy Vaughn. And at the time he was preaching there, and then his precious wife, I was getting to the point where, I had learned right from wrong, and I'd been doing a lot of wrong, and I was really being convicted about it. And I was sitting kind of up toward the pulpit there area, and I'm surprised because most of the time I'd be back there in the back, you know. But I, Miss Vaughn came up and said, "Honey, are you all right?" And I was crying, and she said, "Don't you feel like you need to be saved?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am, I sure do." And I remember that well. And she knelt down there with me, and then Brother Vaughn did, and it seemed like there was a big crowd in there, best I remember. But I'll never, as long as I live, I'll never forget that. And although I have rededicated my life a couple of times since then, that is the day that God came into my heart, and I don't know, that's been a long time back, but I could rattle on. I know a lot of things, you know, and
just keep it
Okay.
going. My name is Jeff Woolbright, and I've been going to Dodson Branch most of my life. I started in 1973, and I never will forget the first time I ever walked in the doors as a little boy. I remember sitting in the middle back, and Brother James Hammonds was preaching, and we started going to church there. And over the next few years, I really admired and looked up to several people in the church, and I always had a desire to be a Christian. I always wanted to be a Christian because the people I looked up to was all Christians, and I wanted to be like them. I never will forget, on January 25th of 1976, on a Sunday night, anybody knows me, I love sports, I love football, and I lived and died football at the time, and there had been football games that day, and I come to church, and instead of listening to the preacher, I was thinking about the football scores and things, but for just out of the blue, God spoke to my heart for the very first time. And I was like Brother Dow, I thought you had to wait till the altar call. And so I couldn't wait till that altar call came. And I never will forget, we were sitting in the old church house on the right-hand side, about middle ways back, and I was on one side of the pew, and my mom was on the other. And I remember walking over to her, and I said, "Mom, I want to be saved." And boy, she grabbed me up, and up to the altar we went, and I was saved on January 25th, 1976. And Brother Daley McCowan was her preacher, and he was such a great influence on my life. And he didn't preach that night, but I remember going out the door, he told me, he said, "Young man, you need to be baptized and read your Bible." And I never will forget that. And 2 weeks later, on February the 8th, at Cummins Mill, and one of them old-fashioned outside baptizings we had last week, I was baptized, and it was about 35 degrees that day when I was baptized. And I remember there was a big crowd, and it was cold, and the water was cold, but I wasn't a bit cold. And I remember Brother Daley baptizing me and dunking me under the water, and I can remember coming up, and as my eyes cleared, and I told Brother Raymond this many times, I can still see him standing on the banks of Cummins Mill singing "Shall We Gather at the River" as I come out of the water. But I'm thankful for this church because it is the church that I was saved.
I was baptized in August 1958 at the mouth of Spring Creek. There was 9 that were baptized that day, and Brother Arville and Brother Michaela baptized us. And several of those were saved in the August revival. I was saved on Mother's Day that year, on Mother's Day night.
I saved, I didn't mention this a while ago, but it was August 10th, 1983. Brother Clayton Paget was our pastor at that time, and this was during revival. Brother Norman Livingston was holding the revival at that time, and then I was baptized this was on a Wednesday, that following Sunday, we had a baptism down at the Cummins Falls area, Blackman's Fort area down there, and that's where I was baptized at. The other thing,
was it revival or just church?
Did you say Bible school? I think I said it Bible school, I believe.
Remember, did your revivals you went to?
Yeah, we went to every revival they had.
What were they like?
Well, they were good. People got up and shouted. Oh, that house would be just crowded, and they'd be shouting all over that house. Now, back then, it was, you know you'd be at the church.
And it didn't last 2 or 3 days. It lasted 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
What about baptizings?
Well, we didn't have no baptizing place in the church. We had to go down the hill, down the back of the church, down the hill, and then up a ways. And there's just a little old place there. And that's where I was baptized.
That's where I was too.
Now, I wasn't baptized in the church. I baptized outside.
They baptized you in the church.
They
didn't have no baptizing in the church.
We had to go down.
Well, now in this church, but now they never did have one till they got this church.
We're not as long.
No.
But they went there till they
All right, Roddy, Dad, I told you I didn't want to be on that.
Get her some more.
Roddy, I told you I didn't want to be on that.
Where were you baptized at?
In that hole where Aberdeen was. Down below the church. But that's all I'm
Who baptized you?
Michaela and Rogers.
Oh, we had a good baptizing hole down there. It was deep.
Didn't say go deep, it'd be deep for me.
Well, they did.
I'm afraid they dropped me.
I can see
that water.
Nancy.
My name is Dal Allen. I started church here back many years ago, back when I was just a small kid. And God has blessed me richly, and I've lived to be 80 years old. But I started here when I was a little kid. And there was 2 churches in one, but it seemed like everybody got along. We had a great time. And God blessed, and I can't forget the revivals we used to have here back when we were young. And there'd be as many people outside as was inside, and the house would be filled. And God really blessed. We've seen a lot of souls saved. And I wanted to be just like the other boys and girls. I wanted to do like they done. But one day back in 1958, on July the 14th, I was sitting about 2/3 of the way back in the house, and God, He decided He better change my plans. And He got me under conviction, and Harvey Garrison was preaching, and I couldn't hardly wait till he got through. I wanted to go to the altar. I didn't know you could go anytime you needed to. I thought I had to wait till he got through. But when he got through, I made my way down to the altar and confessed my sins to God. And God saved me. And I thank God for that. And that was in July the 14th in 1958, many years ago. And God blessed me in mysterious ways. And I thank God for it. But I remember 1969 that was a revival, August revival, I guess it was, I believe it was, when I got saved. And I was out in the yard, and I had a awful good friend come out there, Joe Eddie Mayberry. And he talked to me and led me to the Lord. You can't beat a friend like that. And I'll always thank the world of Joe.
Brother Caleb was the pastor when I started church back in the 50s, and I got saved back in 1953 or 54. I was baptized down in the Dodson Branch Holler down there with all the rest of them. And then we went through some revivals and all, and I can't remember who the preachers all was, but we went to revivals and all, so.
Remember when you got saved?
Under preacher McCaleb. Back years ago. How many years it's been? Been a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Preacher McCaleb.
Yep. Do you know any stories about him?
No, but he was a good man, I think.
I'm Susie Mayberry. I've come to this church all my life, which is soon to be 61 years. I have lots of memories, and some of these guys have brought some of them to my mind. I was saved when I was 10, and in what we call the old church. I'm sure there was a church there before that one, but it was in the summer. I'm not positive of the day, but it was in the summer. And Arvil Lee was our pastor. Ramona, one of his daughters, was a real good friend of mine, and we were sitting together that Sunday, and we both got saved on that day. And then a week later, we were baptized too. And I'm not sure where it was, but it was somewhere out in the creek or a river somewhere, because we didn't have the baptistry at that time. Then Arvil, like I said, was our pastor. His daughter Sue was our piano player, and they left in 1969 for Arvil to go to another church to pastor. And so I started playing the piano then. I knew 3 songs, and Brother Matt Crabtree and Brother Monroe Webb were our song leaders for the most part. Brother Raymond and Sister Darlene had started coming at that time, and Brother Raymond had started leading some. And so they were very patient with me, and we made it through, and I can play a few more songs than that now. Not much better, but I can still play a few more songs.
Miss David Marble came in 1958. In 1959, probably the last Sunday in May, Malcolm Rogers came, and Arvil asked him if he wanted to preach, and he preached that night. People were saved, and there was such a sweet spirit. And Arvil said, well, nobody seemed to want to go home. He said, y'all want to come back tomorrow night? And we did. And that revival went on at least 2 weeks, maybe more, I'm not sure. And I think there was 60-something people saved. And such a wonderful time. I mean, people wouldn't hardly leave. They're afraid somebody else would get saved and they'd miss it. But it's really great times. My daddy rededicated his life to the Lord, and my brother was saved in that revival also. And I can't tell you who all else. And at that time, they put their names, prayer requests for lost people. They wrote them down on like a poster board in pencil. And when they got saved, they put their name in ink. I thought that was pretty neat.
You remember any of them? Remember any of them?
Yeah.
Who preached there?
You know, I don't remember who the Mission Baptist was. They just had church every other Sunday. But Papa always wanted us to cook dinner for him one day during the revival. So we done it. I don't know where's any can or not.
Were you saved at Dodson Branch or somewhere else?
At Dodson Branch.
You tell about that?
Well, we were having a good revival, and there's a lot of people getting saved. So I went up there with them.
How old were you?
14, I think.
And me, I was a little bit, I guess I was kind of resentful maybe of people coming around, like Bobby was talking a while ago about people would come around and try to get you to be saved. Well, me, I didn't want to hear it. I did not want to hear it. So it took me a long time to realize really that God loved me. And I guess, of course, I've told you before, when my daughter was born, is when I found out what love was all about. Of course, I love Linda, but, you know, to think that God loves you more than you love your own child, that's hard to understand. It is for me. I don't know how anybody can love you more than that, but He does. Well, finally, I accepted Jesus Christ, and I was 47 years old. And in those 47 years, I know a fact of 3 times I could have very easily been killed in car wrecks. And no telling how many times other than those 3 that I do remember, but I was very, very hard to get to. I was the type of person that, I'd say, well, if there's a God, make that limb move. That's not the way it works. Everybody knows that but me. But finally, I accepted Jesus Christ. And another thing, I always used to love to have fun, and still do. I thought if you're a Christian, if you were living for Jesus Christ, you couldn't have fun. Right, the opposite is true. That's how strong the devil is. Don't let nobody tell you the devil's not strong. He is a strong person. But that is when you start really having fun, really being able to sleep at night, really being able to enjoy yourself, is when you accept Jesus Christ as your Savior.
But that was all. Well, Dodson Branch's best church there. It's the only one. There ain't another church like it. Never will be, and won't never be.
Oftentimes in my memories I wandered again to the little old church by the road. I can see the dear people and hear them so plain, singing songs of that blessed abode. I can hear my dear mother as she fervently prayed, "Blessed Jesus, help me carry my load." She was never downhearted and never dismayed in the little old church by the road. There my mother was praying and the preacher was saying, "Sinner come."